Welcome back in, everyone, to another faction focus. We're talking about the Daughters of Cain today for 4th edition Age of Sigmar and the Warcom article that we saw this morning. We're going to talk about the lore, the battle traits, battle formations, war scrolls, and every other little detail that they shared with us. So let's get right into it. In the Age of Myth, the Chaos god Slaanesh was deceived by the Elf gods Tyrion, Teclis, and Malerion, but their plan also involved Morathi, Malerion's mother. Slaanesh, who treasured elf souls above all else, was enticed by the prospect of consuming such powerful beings. However, the scheme led to Slaanesh being trapped and chained in a subdimension between Ulgu and Hysh, allowing the elf gods to extract souls from the world that was and bring them into the mortal realms. Morathi, leveraging her position, created the cult named the Daughters of Cain in the mortal realms, and using her share of the liberated souls, she fashioned the formidable Scaithborn, monstrous witch elves that served her bidding. Yet Morathi's ambitions extended beyond forming a powerful following. She sought to ascend to godhood herself. To achieve this, she cooperated with the Stormcast Eternals during an assault on the 8 Points, only to betray them and claim the rare Realmstone Varanite. This Varanite fueled a ritual that enabled Morathi to seize more souls from Slaanesh and complete her transformation into the deity Morathi Cain, named after the bloody-handed god worshipped by her cult. The Daughters of Cain can be found throughout the mortal realms, serving as allies against chaos, death, and destruction. However, their true loyalty lies with Morathi Cain and themselves. The Daughters of Cain are renowned for their terrifying combat prowess, employing a battle strategy that emphasizes on agility and relentless, frenzied attacks. They favor light armor, placing their trust in their speed and their lethal skill to dispatch enemies before they have a chance to retaliate. In service to their bloodthirsty god, these all-female warriors engage in brutal training exercises, honing their ability and ensuring that they remain ever ready to face any challenge on the battlefield. Despite Morathi's meticulous plans, one unforeseen event occurred during the soul-stealing ritual. Another god soul, Marai Heg, managed to escape, empowering a sub-faction within the Daughters of Cain that revered this elven deity of fate and death. Cthusa, always faithful to Marai Heg, leads this splinter group as the Crone Seer. Only time will reveal the implications this divide on the cult and its role within the Grand Alliance Order. When I first saw the battle traits for the Daughters of Cain, I wasn't particularly impressed, but the more I think about it, the more I actually think they're really cool and very thematic for the army. So let's take a look at what they get in their battle traits. The first one is going to be a command ability once per battle in any combat phase. So when you have that once per battle tag, it's a pretty big deal because you're only using it a single time in the entire match that you're playing, and it has to be pretty powerful. Luckily it is, because you pick a Daughters of Cain infantry unit that is in combat and it uses 2 fight abilities instead of 1. The second one, however, is going to be Strike Last for the rest of that turn, which means that your opponent will get a chance to hit you first. However, if they also have Strike Last, then you would, if you do it on your turn, that is, you would have a chance to still hit them first. And we can give people Strike Last. In this army, we know of one possible way already. From the combat article, there was a skill that gave Strike Last, and it was one that you might want to use this all-out slaughter on, like paired with that unit. We then have a passive called Blood Rites, and this is really cool and thematic. Basically, the longer the battle goes on, the more powerful the Daughters of Cain are going to become. Each battle round, they get a new passive ability, and it adds on. So they get all of them as they progress through the battle. So for example, in the first battle round, you get 1 to run rolls, and in the second battle round, you get 1 to charge rolls. But in the second battle round, you'll have both those abilities, 1 to charge and 1 to the runs. In the battle round 3, you get 1 to hit. 4, you'll get 1 to wound, and then in 5, you get 1 to the attacks characteristics of this unit's melee weapons. And this affects any friendly Daughters of Cain units, just a full, army-wide buff. Now, you have to wonder, this doesn't seem that interactive. Some people have a lot more decisions to make with their battle traits, but That's with battle traits that kind of play like abilities when you look at the Ossiarch Bone Reapers or the Cities of Sigmar or whoever else. But there are a lot of decisions to be made here. How to protect your army or best to utilize them, position them to take advantage of these big buffs that are about to take place. It is very, bottom loaded, because you have to get all the way to round 3 to see some incredibly impactful things here where you actually have, +1 to hit, +1 to wound. All of a sudden your profiles can become insane, right? Like when you get to the end of this, when you get to Frenzied Worshippers, it's going to be a very powerful ability. So I kind of like it because you want to make sure that you take the most advantage of this, and your opponent, if they're paying attention, is going to be in a really tough spot in that 5th battle round if you kind of get the game to go that long, because they have to play around it too. And it's going to affect games because they'll see that all of a sudden they are going to be in a position where they might get wiped out really quickly because of how powerful you have become. We also have battle formations, and the one they show is the Scathe Coven, which is going to be the speed of the Scatheborn. And so if the unmodified charge rule for a friendly Melusai or Kinerai unit is 8+, that unit has strike first for the rest of the turn. Now, keep in mind, this is unmodified charge rule, which means the ability that we just looked at, where we saw Quickening Bloodlust and Headlong Fury, that +1 to charge rules does not actually affect this ability, but that doesn't matter. This is still really, really good to see an 8+ is going to give you a strike first. It's a nuts ability. Strike first is very, very strong. And so if you have anything that gives you extra charge rolls, then that would actually help you here. But otherwise, this is like already, my favorite battle formation, even though we haven't seen the other ones, but they will actually get some other ones. So they say there's other formations that will have a canine infantry theme. There's going to be a shadow magic one. There's going to be a boost to charges, and one that is about hitting people with mortal damage. So lots of good options. They actually all sound really powerful, even though we don't know what the other ones are yet. For our spell casting section, they chose not to show any spells or any prayers, but instead a manifestation by the name of the Blade Wind. And so this actually has a war scroll that we can look at, and we'll bring it up now. And you can see it's got a 12-inch move, a 6+ save, 7 health, and then 7+ for banishment. So really easy to hit, obviously, as a manifestation, but really nice mobility. And what it has is a whopping 9 attacks with a 3-up hit, 3-up wound, 1 rend, 1 damage, crit, 2 hits, which is really quite good for a profile. And if this manifestation charged this turn, you can pick an enemy unit in combat with it to be the target, and on a 3+, you ignore any positive modifiers to save rolls for the target for the rest of the turn. So you put this thing up. Oh, by the way, it flies. It has a ward 6, and yeah, it looks really, really cool when you see the model. I think this is a really good manifestation, just that you can really send it to do some damage, but also keep in mind it's going to help you, I guess, occupy your opponent while you wait for your soldiers to get their frenzied buffs up from those battle traits that we saw at the very beginning of the article. Since we're partway through, I just wanted to mention, if you are enjoying the video, please consider subscribing and supporting the channel. I'm really trying to get the engagement up on these Warhammer videos because I'm working super hard on them, and I know that the YouTube algorithm is pretty confused about what I'm doing since my channel has changed the type of content that it is making. So any type of engagement is good engagement. I really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. Next up, we have to talk about the Warscrolls, and there's a pretty big one here. I should actually say a couple of big ones here, because we've got Marathi Kane, and she has 2 Warscrolls. So first, we have the caster infantry version. Doesn't look too remarkable when you see that there's just a 5-up save and then 6 health, but the abilities here, and again, like the melee weapon, really not such a great profile. I mean, it's actually, it's actually a pretty good profile, because 5 attacks, 3 up to hit, and then 2 rend, 2 damage is pretty good. It's the 4 wound that's like not too crazy, but there's 2 different models for Marathi at the same time. There's her kind of like her humanoid version, or elfinoid version, and then there's the giant snake. I guess I'll put that on the video too, so you can see what that looks like. But basically, what we have this passive here, that if you have them both out, that any damage that this unit would take would instead go over to the Shadow Queen, which is the big snake version. And if this unit would be destroyed, then instead it's going to allocate 3 damage to a friendly Shadow Queen model. And then now that model cannot use any ward saves at that point. Okay. And if that Shadow Queen dies, then this Marathi is going to die. But this Marathi is a wizard 3. It has a ward of 6. And we also see there's a passive for +1 to casting rolls. We have a spell that allows you to switch places with the Shadow Queen. So you can, make a play with one of them. And then with this, spell casting version, just swap them around. Pretty cool. So let's go take a look at the big Shadow Queen version. So this is a freaking model here. It's a huge model. It's got a really, really big 10 control score, huge move at 12 inches, and then 12 health, which you might be thinking that's not a ton of health for like a big mega model, but it has this passive, the Iron Heart of Cain, which means you cannot allot more than 3 damage to this unit per turn. And if it gets to that 3 damage, then any further damage is just ignored. It's not happening. It cannot be destroyed. If you try to destroy it with an ability, it just takes 3 damage. So that means that it's going to take, because that's per turn, right? It's going to take 4 turns for this to actually die, which is super powerful. It also has a ward 6 if attacked directly, but if you attack it through the other copy, like the infantry copy, then it doesn't get to use its ward save, of course. It has a once per turn ability for the army, any combat phase, so you can use it in both combat phases. And basically, you pick an enemy that you're in combat with that unit, you roll a d3, and on a 2+, you inflict that amount of mortal damage on the target. So a 2 or 3, this is a very common effect in the new edition that we're seeing here. And if any models are slain by that ability, for the rest of the turn, you can add 1 to the attacks characteristic of melee weapons used by friendly Kinnerai and Melusai units while they are wholly within 12 inches of this model. That's so cool. It's a leader buff. The more you kill, the more you're whipping up your troops into a frenzy. They're getting inspired by their queen, and they're going harder and harder into combat. So this Shadow Queen also has a nuts ranged attack, 12 inches, 2s to hit and to wound, 3 rend, d6 damage, shoot in combat. So it's only the 1 attack, but it's gonna go off most of the time and do lots of damage. The melee weapons are all very, very powerful too. We have the Heart Render, 8 attacks, 3s and 3s, 2 and 3 for the rend and the damage, crit mortal, just going right into those mortal wounds. And then just a whole lot of extra attacks from the Crown of Serpents and the Envenomed Tail. So this looks like a really potent combo. I know there's not that many Daughters of Cain models, so you pretty much want to be using this no matter what. But that's okay because it's just so darn thematic and cool, and it really makes sense for her to be there with all of her followers. So we also have these Sisters of Slaughter. This is going to be your infantry kind of like mass unit. They're really very weak because they don't have a lot of armor. So we have a 5+ save, right? Not so great. If there's any rend at all, they're just getting hit here, and then they only have the 1 control, the 1 health. However, they subtract 1 from hit rolls for combat attacks that target them. And anytime somebody attacks you and you make a save roll of 6, then you're going to inflict 1 mortal damage on the attacking unit after the fighting has happened. In terms of their weapons, they have a whip, and it's a 3/4 for profile, but again, that can go down to a 2/3 later on in the match. It only has rend against infantry, and it only does 1 damage. So these really aren't very powerful units, aside from having that ward of 6 on there too, to kind of give them a chance to survive, but really, like, not spectacular. But I do like the models, and I really, really like their passives. Like, this is something where we see some really cool theme focused stuff on Warscrolls that you love to see, and I'm glad to see it's not gone from this edition. So we also have the Kinnerai Heart Renders, which are going to be some flying models. They can use that like deployment phase thing where, what's it called, deep striking, where you can set up in reserve, and then you can use a movement phase ability to put them 9 inches from anywhere, any enemy units. They can be 9 inches away anywhere on the battlefield. And if they use a shoot ability, then they can make a D6 move, which is pretty crazy. You can't go into combat with it, but very powerful to shoot and move. And so that it can just kind of land, shoot at people, move away, you know, control something. They could like move up into an objective, shoot at somebody, move back off of it, kind of tag it, you know, if that's what you want to do. The shooting profile is like just okay. And their wounds profile, again, two health and 5+ save, just okay. They do have the ward 6, and they do have crit auto wound, so you go straight to your opponent's save after you hit with a 6. Their melee is not remarkable at all, so they really are just kind of like a very mobile, like little shooting unit that looks very cool, by the way. So the word from the studio, part of the article doesn't really break any ground with news here. You know, it's stuff that we already inferred from the article, that this is a super fast, like mobile, you know, attack heavy, but very weak defensively army. Okay. You need to be mobile. You need to plan ahead. You got to wait for those buffs to come up, and then you need to slam your opponent and take victory, you know, likely from the jaws of defeat, but we'll see. So we can talk about Spearhead really quickly, which is the scaled down version of the like base game Age of Sigmar 4th edition. And the Daughters of Cain get a very similar play style because they still have the Blood Rights battle trait where every round they get something that corresponds to the round. But in this case, there's only 4 rounds in Spearhead, so they don't get the same things. They get 1 to run roll, 1 to charge, 1 to hit, then 1 to wound. And they keep all of the blood right abilities they've gained in previous battle rounds. So it's essentially the same thing, but they don't have that once per battle, you know, command ability anymore. Otherwise, they showed us the Bloodstalkers model, which is like, you know, your Archer Medusa. Check. Love it. 8-inch move, again, super mobile, 2 health, 1 control, 5 up save. They have a very nice range, an 18-inch range on their bow, and a nice profile here of 3 attacks, 3 to hit, 4 to wound, 1 rend, 1 damage. Crit is auto wound, so we go right to that save roll. And then their melee profile, nothing fancy to look at, but they do have a passive that when they make a shooting attack, and the shooting attack, if they don't use a move action, so they stay in like a place where they can aim better, they're going to get critical hits on 5s instead of 6s, which will be really good because then those will be the auto wound and they'll do even more damage. Now it does mention that this army, again, glass cannon, but they don't mention if they have the reinforcement tag where when they die, you can just like bring back some more models. But I would assume that they are going to have that. So that's going to be it. It's going to be the Lumineth tomorrow, which I'm really hyped for because that is one of the factions that I'm painting models for and I'm playing on the tabletop. So super pumped for that. Curious to see what you all think about the Daughters of Cain. You can let me know in the comments down below. You can hop on the Discord and share that information with me if you like. And otherwise, if you can share the channel, like the videos, etc., I would really appreciate the engagement as I'm trying to grow out this new Warhammer part of my channel. So really appreciate all the support. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you in the next one.